I would be filled with a sense of wonder and excitement if you were to tell me that there was a plan in place to produce 4 Beatles biopics, one about John, Paul, George, and Ringo, and that Richard Linklater was going to be the director of each of these films. I would be filled with a mixture of curiosity and excitement if you were to tell me that Martin Scorsese was going to be the director of those 4 films. I would be filled with intrigue and excitement if you told me that a quartet of Beatles biopics were going to be directed by Linklater, Scorsese, Greta Gerwig, and Todd Haynes. In fact, the last option would make a wonderful kind of sense. It would be a perfect decision. How could anyone, even Scorsese, the master of rock operatic drama, want to direct all 4 Beatles biopics? When you really think about it, it's hard to believe. There is no such thing as hoarding the spoils. There is, however, Sam Mendes. According to a master design that was passed down on stone tablets by ancient people, there will be a quartet of Beatles biopics, and all 4 of them will be directed by the producer of American Beauty, Road to Perdition, Revolutionary Road, 1917, and Empire of Light, as well as several other films that I am not alone in not being all that crazy about. I am not sure who the director is, but the plan is in place, and there will be a quartet of Beatles biopics. In no way am I trying to be critical of Mendes. There is no doubt that he is an exceptionally skilled director. The American Beauty has a breathtakingly beautiful design. Despite the fact that I am a member of a very small minority, I still do not consider Skyfall, the first of 2 James Bond films directed by Mendes, to be a particularly strong fan. It is not lost on me that it is a well-liked addition to the pantheon of 007 films. Mendes is gifted when it comes to working with actors, and there is no doubt that he possesses talent. However, I would argue that in the 24 years that have passed since he conquered the Academy Awards with the film American Beauty, he has not exactly lived up to the promise that was made during that awards ceremony. Mendes's filmmaking is characterized by a certain sincerity and depression, as well as an excessive amount of thematic self-awareness. Despite the fact that he is a master of staging, he is too enamored with concepts that are of low quality. To my mind, he has not yet created a track record that conveys the message that he is the director you should entrust with the responsibility of telling the tale of the Beatles. 8 to 10 hours of it in its entirety. Take into consideration the following scenario. The first Beatles movie that Sam Mendes has directed is released, but it is not well received by the public. If this is the case, then we are destined to be stuck with 3 more Mendes Beatles movies forever. Regardless, who was it that handed him the keys to the kingdom of the Fab Four already? When Sam Mendes was a child, didn't he master the art of sharing? Because their history is so intertwined with mythology, the Beatles, whether viewed as a group or as individuals, could appear to be the most challenging topic for a biopic. The fact of the matter is, however, that there have been a number of remarkable biopics about the Beatles. An hour-long speculative dramatization of what may have occurred during the holiday trip to Spain that John Lennon and Brian Epstein, the manager of the Beatles, took together in 1963, Christopher Munch, a brave independent filmmaker, was the one who set the ball moving in 1991 with his film The Hours and Times. The fact that Epstein was attracted to John is well known, and the movie had a gay element associated with it. Ian Hart's portrayal of John Lennon was a revelation, although the primary focus of the film was on showing one of the Beatles with an unusually close relationship. For the second time, Hart was cast in the role of John in Backbeat, a remarkable drama directed by Ian Softley and released in 1994. Backbeat depicted the time that the Beatles spent in Hamburg shortly before they became famous. This is without a doubt one of the most genuine music biopics that it has ever been. And despite the fact that this is not in the same category, I found myself really engrossed in Nowhere Boy, 2009, which is an early John Lennon biopic directed by Sam Taylor Johnson. Lennon's formative relationships with his mother, Julia, and his aunt Mimi, who reared him, were portrayed in a film that knew them from the inside out. All 3 of these films deal with the Beatles before to the beginning of Beatlemania, and this is not a coincidence. They were only people at that time, they had not yet attained the status of being greater than Jesus. How, then, can the lives of the Beatles be dramatized after they have reached the level of being larger than life? I would suppose that any filmmaker who is still alive would be in a state of awe when confronted with such a formidable competition. In my opinion, it makes perfect sense to distribute the four Beatles biopics among four different directors. This is one of the reasons this is the case. The Mendes project, on the other hand, reveals that Sam Mendes already possesses his own singular and comprehensive perspective on the tale of the Beatles. I don't think I'm being reckless or unjust when I say that right now. I don't trust Sam Mendes to have a vision of the Beatles that is compelling enough to be worthy of the Beatles. This is despite the fact that we shouldn't, of course, pass judgment on a movie before it's even been made. Mendes appears to have developed a means to turn the lives and music of the Beatles into a spectacular kind of entertainment thanks to his decision to produce all four of these films, which is my greatest concern.